that has been missing for all these many weeks. And Larry is back for the night and wants to talk to us about the 10 points or 10 principles of the system that we promote. So here's Larry.
Yes, here I am indeed. I've been away for quite a while. I've been babysitting. I've been performing in the production of Fiddler on the Roof. And though it's been fun and tiring, it's really nice to be back talking about one of my favorite subjects. This evening's symposium, which I wish was a seminar, will be dealing with a proposed modification of the invisible hand idea, in which no payers are within the system. They take the other features, aspects of it, but they eliminate the payers. Unfortunately, the payers, I believe we've just been joined by Jason. Hi, Jason. Unfortunately, the payers are an essential feature, an aspect of the free market money. Without the payers, it just doesn't work. To show how that is the case, we can look at the first few principles of the new money. It exists only in computer accounts of individual people. Only the individual owning the account can have money deducted from that account. Money cannot be transferred from one person's account to another person's account. And purchases are made by having the amount of the purchase deducted from the account of the purchaser. You will note, based on this, that money can go out of your account, but there's no facility within those four principles for getting any money into an account. In other words, money which you spend simply ceases to exist. Money which you earn has to have some means of appearing in your account. How can it get there? Now, there are a number of possibilities. One is that you could simply have everybody, like when you pass go in the game of Monopoly, you get $200. Well, it could be that every week some certain amount of money is put into each account so that everybody would get the same amount each time period. Well, that sounds very equitable, and I have nothing against equitable, but that certainly eliminates all motivation for people to do better than their neighbor, or for people to put any extra effort, or for people to do anything. If you're going to get the money regardless, why bother? Why worry? Why, you have no motivation. The money provides no incentive. If, on the other hand, you put in, say, random amounts of money with no particular pattern, you have exactly the same problem. There's nothing you do affects how much money you have to spend, and therefore it provides no motivation. It seems, therefore, that only the people would be doing good things, would be benefiting their neighbors, do that anyway. And the money, if they're doing it anyway, isn't really needed. Well, someday, maybe when human beings are perfected as a species, we'll just automatically do good things for each other. But that state hasn't existed yet, and I don't see it coming on the near horizon. Certainly, if the present-day politicians have anything to say about it, it won't happen. So we have to eliminate just randomly increasing the amount of money in people's accounts. Then there's the possibility of having people put money in the accounts, but these are whoever, these are people who just have the power. We could have government officials doing this, but do you really want government officials deciding who puts money in which account or how much? I certainly don't. I mean, if I can't trust the average man on the street, why should I trust the government? If I can't trust strangers, why should I trust some government official? I mean, the government officials have, through history, proven themselves to be just as fallible, just as selfish, just as greedy. Well, you know the long list, as the rest of us. They're not saints, but we need some means of getting the money into the accounts. And if you eliminate the payers, You eliminate that possibility. So if the system is going to work at all, it has to have somebody putting money into the accounts. Would you like to have the computer programmed in such a way that it decides how much money you are to get? It decides what you have earned. Well, I challenge anyone to come up with a computer program which can make these subjective decisions needed for such payments. But let's assume that some genius computer programmer has come up with software which does that. Marvelous. Now then, what is the motivation of that computer? How are we going to control what it's trying to accomplish? What restrains it? What keeps it from running amok? What keeps a computer program bug from messing up the system altogether? Well, I can't think of anything that would do that. So therefore, that facility, that approach to the problem isn't going to work either. You cannot have a computer program independently, on its own, with nobody controlling it, make up these decisions. Now, if you have somebody controlling it, if you have the computer making the decisions, but a small coterie, isn't that a wonderful word? A small set, a small group of human beings have the veto power, shall we say, have the ability to change the programming. What prevents them from tinkering with the code so that they get lots of money and other people don't? Well, I can't think of anything that would prevent it. If they control the machine and the machine controls the money, they control the money. And there we're right back with the same problem of having some government or other, perhaps some religious priesthood, perhaps some gang of idiots like the Three Stooges. Somebody is in control of the machine and can make the machine pay what they want. Then it's not really the machine making the decision.
Did you go through this thought process when you first came up with the idea?
I went through it, but it didn't take nearly as long as it takes to explain it. Uh, the idea came pretty much by interaction between me and my class. And I would say, I might say something, and say, well, what about such and such? And I'd give them an answer. And it turned out that the answer was, you have to have people doing it because they're the only ones that can make the subjective decisions. How are you going to keep them in line? Well, they can't be paying each other because that lets them run amok. So they can't have money, which means that everybody's got to be given the necessities since the payers have to be, and you don't want people becoming payers just to get the necessities. And the system just sort of unfolded like a complex origami paper folding. Everything fit. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happened to me. And there it was. So if we are going to have these decisions made in order to control, in order to make sure that the people who are assigning the money don't run amok, they have to be vulnerable to the general public. And by golly, not having any money, not being able to buy anything, being in effect subject to the charity of the community, makes them very sensitive to what the community thinks about them. And it means that if things start going bad, and they have the power of money to fix it, they're strongly motivated to fix it because they're living among the people. They're among the first. They're like the canary in the coal mine. When things start going wrong, the poor are always among the first to find out about it because it happens to them first. Well, same thing is going to happen to the payers first then. And therefore, the payers are very likely to do what is going to make people in general feel good, happy, satisfied, secure. Let's say that there's some threat that we find out about. Some asteroid is going to come very close to the Earth in 50 years, and we don't know whether it's going to hit the Earth or not. it's that close. It might graze the upper atmosphere, or it might hit the Earth, or it might miss by 50 miles. Now that, over the course of 50 years, that's really, that's cutting it close. That's going way out in the decimal places in terms of calculating that orbit. So we've discovered that this asteroid is big enough to, it's several miles in diameter. So it's big enough to cause major, major problems, maybe the extinction of our species. Now, how would we want to approach that? How would we want to react to that? Would we want to take, well, I'm old. I'm going to be dead in 50 years anyway, so what do I care? But there are other people who are not going to be, who are going to hope to live through this passage of the asteroid. They'd like to be able to do something about it. So if we have to have some means of paying them, well, the payers can't pay till after the benefit is known, which means that if we do something now, like send up a rocket to land on the asteroid and nudge it gently so it misses by 5,000 miles instead of only 50, well, that's all well and good, but you sent the rocket up now, and you've got 50 years to move the asteroid. Well, nobody's going to get paid for that for 50 years. So how's that going to work? Well, by an odd coincidence, if we improve rockets, if we go into space and become very skilled and able there, if we do a whole lot more science and figure out a lot more ways of controlling it, think about the abilities we'll have in 50 years from now as compared with the ones we've got that we had 50 years ago. And we can do all sorts of things now that we couldn't do in 1965. Cell phones. In 1965, we couldn't tell you within less than an inch how far away a certain spot on the moon is from the surface of the Earth. I mean, there are all sorts of things that we can do now we couldn't do then. We know a whole lot more. We have a whole lot more ability. So just by increasing the ability, by doing science, by improving our technology, you make yourself able to earn enormous amounts of money from stuff you didn't have any idea was going to come up. In other words, what you may do now may generate huge income for you in years to come, and you don't even know what it's going to be. So there will be all sorts of motivation to improve science, to improve the technology, to take care of the environment, to see threats coming and do something about them, because that's how you can earn enormous amounts of money. Talk about good retirement income. If you have, well, let's say you're a teacher and you're teaching kids science, and some of those kids become really good scientists and discover all sorts of useful things. Well, look at all the money that's going to be rolling in when you reach retirement age of 55, 65, 75, or whenever you choose to stop teaching. It's just overwhelming. You can be fabulously wealthy because you were a teacher 50 years before. But none of this works if the payers don't exist, because there's no motive, there's no incentive, there's no means by which people can get money into their accounts that motivates them to provide appropriate behavior. Your motivation to help other people is just going to have to be from the goodness of your heart. It won't be from the greed in your heart. Now, personally, I have a very good heart. I have a lot of goodness in there. I enjoy helping other people. I take pleasure in that. But it's been my observation that there are some other people who aren't that way. Some people really would rather not be bothered. If you go to the grocery store, you may have noticed that some people leave shopping carts in the handicap spaces. Now think about that. Just because you didn't want to put the cart in the rack or push it back to the grocery store, you have blocked some handicapped person's access to parking in that parking lot close to the store. Now, to me, that's just awful. But it indicates that there are people out there who really are thoughtless, don't care about others, who would just as soon ignore the needs of other people. But I don't know of anybody who ignores their desire to get money. Even I like to get money. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. I do like to get money. I'm glad I was able to retire with a good income. It makes me feel good to know that there's plenty of money coming in to meet my needs. Now, I'm a real cheap date. When I go out, I order water to drink, and I very rarely order something that's in the expensive side of the menu. I wear clothes till they wear out. I drive cars till they don't go anymore, and I'm very happy with that. I enjoy reading, watching TV. All my hobbies, all my pastimes are cheap, which means I can be rich, very little money. But that doesn't mean that I don't want some money. I'm still motivated by money. Now, if I'm motivated by money and I'm living in the economy, free market money economy, or the non-POM economy, as we call it, then I'm still going to be motivated. I'm still going to want to do some things which earn money. Just because it's nice to have, just because I might want to buy some luxury items to give to my granddaughter or give to friends. It's Christmas after all, and buying little luxuries for your friends is a nice thing to do. And I would like to have money to be able to do that. So even I, who needs very little, who gets along rather inexpensively in life, even I would be motivated to earn money if there are payers. If there aren't payers, then I'll just have to depend on whatever, what would you call it, whatever means is used to get money in the accounts in this other system, which has no payers. And that, you just can't trust that. Now, we've been talking about free market money here as if it were an economic system. And it is an economic system. But it's also an ethical system. Yes, an ethical system. It's not just a code of directions like do this and do that. The Ten Commandments is an ethical system in that it is 10 injunctions concerning how you should think and behave. Now, free market money is not that kind of ethical system. Free market money is an ethical system which actually brings about ethical behavior. That is, which it is a system which results in people doing good things. Now, the Ten Commandments have been around for thousands of years, and I haven't noticed people being very ethical. The Quran has been around for, since 650 or so AD, and I haven't noticed a lack of crime and troubles in Islam. If you look at almost any nation's laws, you will find that they are violated. Take, for example, that noble institution, slavery, which is known in all nations throughout history, including modern-day United States. Slavery still exists. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional in the United States. People can go to jail for holding slaves. And, of course, many of the slaves today are children who are being used as sex slaves. But the point is that though it's illegal, it is still practiced. People still enslave other people. Therefore, the moral codes, the ethical systems which we are used to, which currently exist, don't actually bring about much ethical behavior. If your mother telling you, be nice, probably does more to bring about good behavior than all these ethical codes, all the philosophers and their ideas of how ethics should be arranged. But if we look at the free market money, if we look at non-POM, it turns out that non-POM is an ethical system which brings about good behavior. If a person does something that benefits someone else, that's good. That gets pay, that motivates that behavior. So, if people gain money as a result of being good, of doing good things, then we can say that the system brings about ethical behavior. It motivates ethical behavior. The Ten Commandments just says, do it. The Catholic Church says, do it. Islam says, do it. The state says, do it, or I'll hit you, or punish you in some other way. All these institutions, all these traditions, all these means tell you what to do, and they threaten you if you don't do it. But that does not mean that we do it. In fact, unfortunately, almost everything that the law addresses, almost everything which the Ten Commandments addresses, almost everything in the Quran, there are people who violate these requirements. There are people who don't do them. And there are people who do what it says, but bring about, shall we say, unfortunate consequences. So, if we compare that with free market money motivates behavior which makes people happy, motivates behavior which keeps people alive and healthy. It motivates behavior which makes life better for everyone. It motivates behavior which almost anyone would consider to be good. It provides an actual motivation for it. And it motivates behavior which prevents people from doing harm. For example, let's say we have some person who is mentally ill. They're paranoid, they think the world is out to get them, and they're running around trying to hit people with a stick. Now, if a person sees this and they're carrying their own concealed carry weapon, a pistol, shall we say, and they shoot that person with the pistol and kill them, they have done something which is preventing harm. Question is, will they be paid for it? But shooting someone and killing them is harming someone. So therefore, the harm they did is likely to be far greater than the harm they prevented. Hence, they wouldn't get much money. So let's say that instead of shooting and killing the person, they simply say, shoot them in the leg. Well, that also is harming them. If the person, the nutcase who was hitting people with a stick, I mean, if it's a big heavy stick and is breaking bones, then maybe the shooting them in the leg prevented more harm than the harm done by shooting them in the leg. But notice, if the person, instead of shooting the guy, does something else which disarms him and stops him and prevents him from harming other people, and also does not harm the nutcase, then he has done harm without doing harm. He has prevented harm without doing harm. And therefore, he's maximized his pay. He's earned the most he could in those circumstances. Now, you'll notice that this is not the case with our current systems of enforcement. Neither the state, nor the church, nor almost anything else, the school system, none of them take into account the harm that is done via the enforcement. They don't reduce the reward on the basis of harm done in the process of enforcing. I'm sure that if you spend much time on the internet, you've heard cases where children are treated very badly in school. There was a case that was on the news a month or two ago about a teenager who was yanked out of her chair and thrown to the floor and handcuffed and so on. Well, it's pretty obvious that doing that to a person harms them. And that officer, I believe it was a police officer, who acted in that fashion would have reduced his pay substantially as a result of the harm done, not only to the young woman, but if you were a member of the class, seeing such violence isn't good for you. That harms the viewer as well as the person being thrown to the floor. So, the ethics of the system encourage people to bring about a prevention of bad behavior without doing any harm. Now, notice that our law says if you don't do this, we'll take money away from you. If you don't do what you're supposed to, we'll put you in jail. Some cases, if you do a wrong thing, we will do our best to kill you. Now, all those things are harming the people who have committed the crime. You say, well, yeah, they committed a crime. They deserve to be harmed. Maybe they do. I won't speak to that. I'll leave that as it may be. But if we harm somebody, even if they deserve it, even if it's warranted, it's still harm. If we put somebody in jail, it doesn't make them a good person. It doesn't prevent them from harming their cellmates. It doesn't make them do good things for other people. If we shoot them or hang them or cut off their head with a guillotine, we've certainly harmed them, and they are not going to be able, after that point, to do good things for anyone because they're dead. Therefore, I suggest that an ethical system which emphasizes getting people to do good things without harming them, without punishment, without coercion, is going to be far superior to an ethical system which says, if you do the wrong thing, we're going to punish you. Now, if we take that one step further, notice that only people can make that kind of decision. The payers have to be able to act, have to be able to decide, have to be able to evaluate the harm that was done, the benefit that was derived, and take both into account. Now, I suggest to you that any other means of getting the money into the accounts, that will not be able to. It will not be able to take all these things into account. It will not have ethics. It will not be ethical. If it acts in such a way as to generate morality, it'll be largely accidental, not intentional. So I'm running out of things to say about the subject. How much time do we have left?
Well, Larry, that's a good question. We only have about 4 minutes left.
Oh, good. We can ask for our audience to send in suggestions for next week's show. How about that?
Are you going to be available next week?
So far as I know, I will. It is getting close to Christmas, so we might figure out some sort of Christmas show in which we talk about how Christmas would be different and how Christmas would be celebrated if we had free market money instead of things like Black Friday.
I think we had a Christmas show last year about Santa.
Yes, I did put together a show for last year. If we get desperate, we can rerun that one, of course.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you were able to clarify some things for some people.
Well, I would be surprised if a person really wants to understand it. It's easy. If a person really wants to take it some other way, really wants it to be something else, they can do that. Human beings are real good at that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was just about to say that they can do that with just about everything.
I'm afraid so. And I hope Jason is still with us. I see his image down there at the bottom of the screen. But of course, he hasn't said anything.
Yeah, he. Excuse me.
I'm silent.
Listening. I think he's just listening.
Well, that's just fine. But we'd still like to hear his voice from time to time.
We will eventually. I mean, we got to get more into getting this up every week, so.
Oh, well, at least we got another show in. And we've only got, what, 2 minutes now?
Yeah, well, Jason is going to start hosting sometimes, but there have been some other issues that have nothing to do with the show or the system or...
You mean he's got a life?
Go figure.
Go figure.
Well, I guess I'll say adios and see you next week.
A bientôt.